Hey, everybody, we're going to pick up our conversation we started last week. So, if you haven't listened to last week's episode, go back and listen to that episode, and then you can listen to this episode. This is part 2 of a 2-part series. I hope you enjoy. Welcome to The Friday Habit with Benjamin Manley and Mark Labriola II.
The Friday Habit is for creators, entrepreneurs, and agency owners looking for actionable ideas on how to grow their business and be more profitable.
We'll pull from our combined knowledge of over 20 years and interview thought leaders that will inspire you and give you the motivation you need to kick your business into high gear. Buckle up. It's Friday. My junior year of high school, me and this other kid, Isaac was his name, we started, dabbling into like writing our own music and doing some performances. There was this thing at our school called Night of the Stars, and it was like a talent show. And him and I, he had this background of gymnastics, and so him and I like put together this act. There was a song back in the mid-90s called Jesus Freak by this band DC Talk. And it was kind of like this mix of like rock and rap, and it was actually a crossover hit. They were playing it on like, the secular rock station here in Colorado. And so it was like kind of like this big song. And so we did this song and we choreographed this whole thing. I was wearing like this white, wife beater like shirt, and I don't think that's probably appropriate to say anymore, but that kind of shirt, baggy black jeans, and we did this whole choreographed dance, and he like flipped over me, and we were doing all stuff, and it was like nuts. Like the crowd went crazy, like standing ovation, and I was like, "This is what I want to do with my life," like this is it, Yep. And so kind of started just getting really involved with music and whatnot, and. During this whole time, my dad still kind of cold and disconnected and really tough on us, abusive, to some extent. And my junior year of high school, he had remarried. He had married this woman, and she was really tough because she kind of had her own kids and just kind of wanted her life with my dad and her kids, and so. It really ostracized my sister and I, and it really became one of those classic like evil stepmother situations. And then also too, like with my dad being like, well, now I no longer have to be both parents. I feel like before he had got married, he was a little. There was like an understanding where like he may be tough on us or like a little bit unreasonable, and then maybe he would think like, you know what, like it's just my kids and me, so I gotta figure out how do I try to be, emotional or intimate with these guys.
Yeah.
But once he got married, that kind of all turned off. It was like, well, the woman is supposed to be the caretaker and the sympathetic one, and then the dad is supposed to be the ruler, Yeah. And that was even that much more tough, for my sister and I. And actually my sister left home 2 years before I did, and after she had left home, it put the spotlight on me, and then things just got really bad, this lady that he was married to, would just do really just crazy stuff, like I won't go into all the details, but it wasn't good, and it was very hurtful. And there was a point early, when I was 16 years old, and it was something like I had forgot to lock the door or something like that, like some weird thing. And we got in this big fight, and I felt like for the first time, like, I should just open up and I should, just share my feelings, and
yeah.
And I was just like, you don't even know who I am. Like I had this double life. Like I would go and be fun and happy and, just have a really good time with my friends and, be the jokester and entertain. And then it was like I would come home and I'd be afraid and, scared and sad. And so, got in this huge fight, blew up, and, my stepmom at the time, she was like, well, why don't you just leave? And I was like, what do you mean just leave? Like, I don't want you guys to get in trouble or anything like that, And then she looked at me and she's like, what are you, chicken? And I like just had my jacket, grabbed my jacket, and I left. And I never went back. And I essentially ran away from home when I was 16.
Wow.
and kind of just tried to figure things out.
Did you have contact with them after that, or was it more like, did they know where you went? Did you talk to them, or are you just like, I'm out?
No, yeah. So I actually I went up to my work and I just started crying. I was like, guys, I just ran away from home. And they were real like, oh my gosh, and they kind of had known like the pretty oppressive situation that I was in, and they're they kind of like instantly went into action, to try to like figure things out for me. My one friend Isaac, he had an older brother at the time, and he like took me to Target and like bought me like all new clothes and stuff like that, and then my friend James, who was in the band with me, he like talked to his parents and was like, hey, my friend like needs help. And then I like lived with them for like 3 months. And, my dad had kind of found out where I was, and, he would call that family and be like, tell Mark when he comes home, it's going to be 10 times worse. And it's going to be, super hard for him. And so it was like, and so they were like, well, we're not going to send him back, And so, yeah, I mean, at that point, it was like, social services had to get involved, and I ended up living with a foster family as kind of my guardians, and so I lived in that foster home until I graduated high school. And I think one of the beautiful things about that whole story with my dad, and it's hard to talk about it really because, I'm actually really close with my dad now.
Yeah.
And, sorry.
You're good, man.
I didn't know. I didn't think I was going to cry.
Love you, man. Happy birthday. I made you cry on your birthday. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thanks. So yeah, because my dad and I are really close now. And I think one of the cool things, and, one of the cool things is that, I never thought I'd have a relationship with my dad again. I thought, he was too far gone, and, he was too prideful, and, that he was, too hard-hearted, and I'd never have a relationship with him. And, I didn't, maybe it was like 6 years almost, and I hadn't talked to him. And, for whatever reason, it got put on my heart to like reach out to him. And I reached out to him, and, he's like, well, why don't you come over? He's living in Colorado still at the time. And we sat down for a few hours, and I was able just to confront him, on everything that he ever done to like hurt me, or that I felt, was unreasonable. And I think, at the time I just felt like, I was an adult now, and I could, be okay with whatever. And it was cool because, he gave me an answer. Like, he'd either say like, hey, I'm sorry. Like I was wrong. Like he'd apologize to me. Or he would give me, an explanation. He would give me a reason, like, hey, the reason why I, did X, Y, and Z was because, I thought I was doing the right thing. Like at the time, I thought that I was, doing my best. And, and so it was one of those things where I was able to kind of get closure from a lot of that hurt and pain, that I kind of experienced as a kid, as a young teen. And, it kind of allowed me to kind of start building this, road to redemption and a relationship, with him. And so now what's cool is that him and I are really close, and I love him dearly. And, he's a fantastic grandfather, and his wife now, his current wife, is amazing. And she's, really great grandma to my kids.
Wow.
And it's really cool because, I look at my kids and I think like, all I ever wanted for them was, a better life, and a normal life,
Yeah.
And so it's cool that they get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been to your house. I've met your family, and I've told you this before, but I'm just really if I didn't even know your backstory, I would be impressed of how good of a dad you are, and how you, when you're with your kids and your family, you're 100% there and you make it fun to be in a family, and I know you even say things to your kids when you drop them off at school. Maybe it annoys them, maybe it doesn't, but it's an awesome saying. Do you mind sharing what that is, what you tell your kids every time before they get
no.
on the...
Yeah. So every day when we drop them off for school, I always tell them, I'm like, be a leader, make a difference, stand up for what is right, help those who can't help themselves, make the best of every situation, stay positive. You're awesome. And I usually say you're awesome like 3 times.
It usually evolves. It's evolved over time, right? You just started saying one of those things, and you just kept
exactly.
adding to it, right?
Be a leader, and then it was like, make a difference. And then now it's like I need a good 2-3 minute lead before they leave the door, so I can get all the things out and said to them. So
I just think that's so cool that you're able to come out of such a hard kind of situation and be able to turn that around and just basically, well, 2 things. One is I think things that I'm hearing from you that are so meaningful is that, and I've heard this from other people too, is that if you're a dad or if you're a parent and your kids come to you and say, hey, you really hurt me, don't be prideful, apologize. That means the world. Even if you screwed everything up, if you can be humble enough to apologize to your kid, that means so much. So
yeah,
I think that's awesome. And then I just feel like the other thing is just nobody has had such a crazy life that they can't have hope, you know what I mean? And turn things around and be able to create that awesome family life that you guys have. Your wife is awesome and your kids are great. And they're so, when I came and stayed with you guys and they were just so polite and just even excited to see me. I'm just a random adult, I think, to them, but they were they talked with me, and just they were just really cool kids. And I think that's comes down to you, being able to be a great dad. So
yeah, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
And so, it's cool because, I've been able to share my story with a lot of people. And to kind of move to that next chapter of my life is that, that band that I was in, we kept writing our own music and kept performing and we ended up competing in this national band competition and put on by the Gospel Music Association. And we ended up winning first place. And so we were able to record a 4-song EP, and we started releasing music, and really started to develop as musicians and creatives, and started to recognize that we have something special here. And at the time, as we were winning that competition, everyone was kind of like a freshman in college. And after we'd won that, it was kind of one of these things you know what? I think we should just all go all in on music and pursue a career as musicians. And so we did that. And, we ended up getting signed and, everything I'd ever dreamed about as a kid, I got to, I achieved, being on the radio and, traveling from coast to coast. And it was just a really fun season of my life as, a young, 20s, to just kind of, you have adventures with your best friends and play music for a living. And one of the things that was great is that I got to share my story. I got to share my story on a consistent basis of, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter where you came from, because I came from probably some of the most worst situations a person can come from, and it doesn't matter, who someone tells you who you are, because you can, your past doesn't define your future, and if you believe it, you can achieve it, and it's a lot of these corny motivational things, but I was a walking example of I didn't ever allow my past to define what my future was going to be, because my past would tell me I should be, some 500-pound crack addict with a needle in my arm somewhere, that's what my past was telling me that I should be. But, I had more hope for my future and, could say that no matter how difficult a situation is, that God has a plan for your life, and that if you stay positive and you make the best of every situation, like you can have success, and so I feel very fortunate that I was able to do that. For a decade I was in that band. And our CDs were released all over the world, and
when you told me about some of the bands that you traveled with, I was like, oh my gosh, like I was listening to those bands. I probably heard your music too. You know what I mean? Like that's crazy.
Yeah, we did have a top 25 single on Christian radio. So, and you can still find us on Spotify and stuff and iTunes. Foolish Things was the name of the band.
I have it saved in my library, and it's funny because I can like. You have people that are like, oh yeah, I was in a band. You're like, oh cool, yeah, I love to hear your music sometime. But there's not that many people that you know personally that you could play their music and people would not realize it was your friend. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So I can play your music in the house and everybody's like, oh, Ben's listening to the radio because it's like high quality. Yeah. It's not like, oh, who recorded themselves on their iPhone in the bathroom or something. You know what I mean, or whatever.
Right.
So,
cool.
it's. I just want people to know it's not just like, oh, I was in a band. I was like, no, this was a successful band. That's crazy. You guys were able to make a living off of that and travel as a band.
Yeah, it was
a huge success.
It is. It's a cool season of my life, and and then it kind of goes into the next chapter of when the band was breaking up. Everyone was kind of getting married, starting to have kids. And people just started wanting different things and to go different directions, and we ended up breaking up, and that was really hard for me because that's all I'd ever wanted to do, and I thought that that's all that I was capable of doing, and so when the band broke up, I was like, crap, like what am I going to do with my life? Like I have no skills, I've sung my whole life for a living. And I had a friend who was a photographer, and he needed a video for this thing. And he's like, hey, do you think you could learn video? And I was like, well, I think so. And this was back in like 2007, before there was really a solid YouTube with tutorial videos on, how to do things. So I was like going to the library and getting books on video editing and video production and all these other kind of things. And then I got a job. I loved Mac computers. And so I was like, all right, what can I do with Apple computers with someone with no college education, with, a terrible elementary education and high school education. I wasn't, with that smart of a kid. I couldn't read that well. I couldn't spell that well. I was terrible at all these things. And so I was like, what am I going to do? And so I got a job in retail, just, selling computers, and picked up a camera and started teaching myself editing softwares. And I just kind of like threw myself out there, and worked a day job, and nights and weekends kind of just hustled and shot videos, got into doing like wedding films and wedding photography and stuff like that, because it was something that I could kind of do on the weekends, and then at nights I could edit videos and whatnot. And then as I got into video, it was kind of like one of those things where people would be like, oh, hey, you do video? Like, I need a video for this, and could you do a video for that? And I just started working. I'd work during the day, nights and weekends. I'd hustle doing my side projects, and I did that for many years. And kind of every job I had, I went from Apple, working in the retail store, and then because they liked me so much, they ended up sending me to Cupertino, California, where I got certified as a Apple hardware and software technician, which then gave me this new skill set, and this new little piece of, line on my resume of Apple certified technician, which I'm grateful for. And, did the retail thing for 3 years. And then opportunity opened up for me to go work at the Remax World headquarters in the IT department. And so during this time, my dad and I were kind of rebuilding our relationship. We were kind of connecting. He was still living here in town. And then he moved to Texas. And he had called me and he said, hey, he was a huge fan of the TV show American Idol. And so he had called me and he said, hey, American Idol is coming to Denver. And I didn't follow the show. I really wasn't a fan of American Idol. But he said, hey, listen, if I drive up, to Colorado, like, would you try out? And I was like, I don't know, Dad. I'm not like really into the show. That's kind of not my thing. I was like a singer. I like write my own music and sing, and I was never like a cover artist. And to this day, people are like, oh, you're a singer, like sing this song. It's like, I wasn't like in a cover band in a bar. Like I was just writing all original music. And so, he kind of persisted. And so he ended up driving up. He's living in Texas at the time. He drove up from Texas. And then we went to the Mile High Stadium here in Colorado. And there was like 12,000 people, like wanting to get in and try out for American Idol just here in Denver. And we waited in line and, got there. And, the stadium is filled. It's crazy. And the way that they do these interviews is they have these massive blocks of like 16 people, like 20 tents, like on the football field, like 20 tents deep, 16 people in these little cubes. And you step up for like 15 seconds and sing a piece of a song and then step back in line. And then they tell you, all right, you're all acts next. And they just crank through 12,000 people in a day.
Wow.
And, I went, I got my 15 seconds. And I stepped back in line, and then they were like, give us 15 more seconds. And then I stood up, 15 more seconds. And they were like, all right, you three, you're out of here. And then they like move me to like the next round. And what you don't see on TV and the way they make it seem is that like all 12,000 people try out for the judges. But really, it's one of those things where they vet, all 12,000. That season, 120,000 people tried out for American Idol, like all across the country, right?
Yeah.
And then I just kept making it past these rounds, and then I ended up making it to the, celebrity round, which is really cool because now when you Google my name, it's on YouTube, and you can kind of see my audition of me trying out for American Idol and making it to Hollywood. I got my golden ticket out of 120,000 people that tried out that year. I made it into a group of less than 100, and so that was kind of like almost like the cherry on top of my musical career. Being in a Christian band that didn't have massive success, it's like nobody knows about that, but there was a season after my episode aired, like I couldn't even go to the mall without people being like, dude, you're that guy from American Idol. I saw you on TV, and it was really cool. And, I made it to Hollywood. I got a really cool experience, an all paid trip. And, I ended up making it past a few rounds in Hollywood, and then I got axed in the group rounds. And so, it was one of those things where it was like that cherry on top where I could kind of close my music career and be at peace with that. And honestly, like when I got axed from American Idol, I was like depressed. I was like in the just the deepest of despairs, because in my mind I was thinking like, oh, like this is why I was a musician. Like my whole life has brought me to this moment to be on TV, and like do American Idol and like, And then when I got axed, it was like, nope, that wasn't your purpose. And it was like devastating,
Yeah.
And but again, I went back to work, and I just showed up every day, and I made the best of every situation. I stayed positive, and continued to do my thing. And then in 2016, I was working. I'd been working for a few years at this real estate tech startup. I was the director of creative media, and the first week of January of 2016, I got laid off. They had some huge funding not come in, and I got laid off. No severance. I hardly had any savings. I got 3 kids and mortgage, and I'm like, crap, what am I going to do?
Just to clarify, did you get married when you're in the band or before you started the band? Is that when you got married?
Yeah, I got married when I was 24 years old. Got married while I was in the band, so it was kind of fun. Yep. My wife would probably say different. Our first year of marriage, like she was on the road traveling with us, selling merch and doing all that kind of stuff.
So how long were you married when the band broke up?
So we'd been married for 4 years.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah,
so
4 or 5 years.
Okay, gotcha. Cool.
And now we've been married for going on 17. So
awesome.
Yeah. But yeah, so I got laid off and was like, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
But I had been faithful for years working a job, and I've been faithful for years, like just doing my side hustle. And I just decided to take the leap of faith. And it was one of those things where I'd always lived my life without regrets, right? Like, there was times where I would be singing in the shower, and I'd be like, oh, I could make it on American Idol, I could be that. And I tried it, and I can say, you know what? Hey, I didn't have what it took to be the top 24, Same thing with the band. It was like, people are like, oh, do you regret that you didn't go to college or, like didn't learn some sort of hard skill or whatnot? And I always felt like, you know what? If ever I find a passion for something that I need a college education for, like I could go back to school, but the opportunity to be young and not have a lot of responsibilities and be in a band, like that's not going to happen again, Yeah. And so this point where it's like, okay, I now had this like director title at this job. I could probably go get another job, making decent money and doing that. But it was like, you know what? Let me just try to do the Brand Viva thing. Let me just see what I can do. I have these skills. I've learned so much. Let me see if I can, like do my own thing, because I know that if I don't, I'm going to have regrets. Like I'm going to, look back and be like, oh, could I have done my own thing?
Yep.
And so I went all in. I got laid off the first week of January of 2016, and I went all in. And there was hard times. There was like, times where it was like, I don't know how I'm going to pay my mortgage,
Yeah.
And my license plate says expect, because it's another kind of, mantra of my life to like expect the blessing, like expect that things are going to work out, expect that people don't have malicious, intention, expect that everything's going to be okay, and because there was times when in that first few years where I wouldn't have enough money to pay my mortgage, right? And I didn't have any jobs on the horizon. And then I'd have all this fear and anxiety and worry, like how are things going to work out? How are, things going to, how am I going to pay my bills? And then like 2 weeks later, somebody would call me and be like, hey, I got this big job, $7,000. Do you think you could do it? And I'd be like, yeah, I can do it, And then that started happening enough to where I started to say, if I lived a life where I expected things to like work out, like I would have less stress, I would have less worry. And if I was more present, like in a moment, and enjoyed like the things that were going on, like my family's happy and healthy, and I have my health and I have a roof over my head and we have food. Like if I was in these moments, like life was good, right? Like when you wake up and you're present in the moment that you're in, like you don't have any worries. Like there's no cares, right? But it's when you start to project in the future and start thinking about what could go wrong and, what are the pitfalls of a situation. That's when you start to have doubts and fears and worry and anxiety and all these other kind of things. It's when you're focused too much on something that doesn't even exist. And if you think about like our emotions and our feelings, and I've said this before, it's like, our emotions and feelings are easily tricked, right? You watch a movie and you get scared, or you watch a movie and you cry. And it's not real. It's fake, right? But your emotions don't know that. It's just what you're inputting into your mind. Your emotions are responding, appropriately to that. And so a lot of times in our own situations, in my situations, I'd be putting things in and they would cause me to respond in a certain way. And then things would work out. And I'd be like, man, I should start living my life like things are going to work out. Like expect the blessing, expect that things are going to work out, because I'll have way more like peace in this moment each and every day and have a lot more happiness in my life if I'm just present, and not thinking about tomorrow. And then when stressful situations arise or things come up that cause me to get anxiety, like to pause and look back and say, okay, like I going to be at peace and I'm going to just expect that things are going to work out, Yeah,
and you're also a hard worker too. So I think that type of philosophy especially works well for you, because you work hard, you enjoy work, you greatly work and that kind of stuff. So it's like, why overthink it? Why worry about it? And you say don't worry about it and expect the best. You're not saying like, all right, my arms set back. Bring me something great. You're working hard for it and putting yourself out there. So that makes a lot of sense.
Well, and I think that's that's something that's very important, and I always encourage young entrepreneurs and people, who want to go off and do their own thing right away, like, yeah, I want to like quit my job and like do my own thing. And it's like, okay, well, that's good. But in some ways, maybe you need to be present in that moment and not try to pursue your own thing at this time. I think about, if I would have started Brand Viva any sooner than I did, and thankfully I got laid off, because I was, in my mind, I had started mentally preparing, like, I think I'm going to try to go do my own thing, but I'm going to save up enough money so I have a nice security blanket to go do my own thing. But I got laid off, which threw me into it. But I think about, like, if I hadn't worked at Apple, if I hadn't worked at Remax, if I hadn't worked at that real estate tech company, like, I wouldn't have the knowledge and the skills, and I wouldn't have the relationships that I had that allowed me to be super successful as Brand Viva.
Yeah.
All the success that we've ever had at Brand Viva has been through relationships. It's been through, people that I have known, and through us producing good work and then getting referrals and growing that way. And I wouldn't have that if I hadn't worked those jobs. And so a lot of times I think we need to ask ourselves, like, am I wanting to leave because I'm frustrated with the situation, or it would just be easier if I was gone? Or do I need to learn something from this moment, And that, and a lot of that, even with work that we do, right? Like, okay, I have this client that's difficult. Like, is this something where I'm supposed to be learning a lesson from this? Like, if I remove this difficulty, like, I'm not going to learn something from it. But if I push through that pain, there's a lesson on the other side that then I can learn from and then grow and better myself, in the future.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that's one of the only things that keeps me going sometimes when there's a really tough project that comes up and something goes wrong, and we're like, okay, we got to go above and beyond and fix this for our client, and maybe it's a hard time for a while to get that kind of stuff done. But yeah, looking back, if you keep in your mind that you are actually learning a lesson that's going to be with you for the rest of your business career, then it's like, wow, this is actually worth it. Like, this is a gift. Like, this challenge is actually a gift, so that I can learn something from it and avoid it in the future or improve as a person. So that's awesome. Well, yeah. So now you have a company, you have a team. We were talking just before we started recording how you have the freedom to kind of do what you want with your time to push the company forward. You don't have to do day-to-day stuff. So it's amazing. Like, we're just thinking, like, where we started at the beginning of this story, being kidnapped, living in Hawaii, your dad not knowing where you were, on the whole journey you've gone through. It's amazing to see, like, this is where you're at now in life. Like, that's amazing. Do you feel like you're living the dream now? Do you feel like, hey, I'm happy, or do you feel like, oh, I got to keep pushing? Like, where are you at in your mind with, like, where you are in life?
I mean, I feel very blessed. I think about, where I could be, and I have, 3 beautiful children, and I have an amazing wife, and I just feel so fortunate. Every day I wake up and I just feel so blessed. And I think gratitude is another important aspect of having a good life, and being content and happy, is because, when you can be thankful for even the small things, like that, man, I have a warm water, like I have a warm shower, like, like I have a meal, like some of these small things, like when you can live in that space, it gives you appreciation, and it gives you kind of motivation each and every day to like keep going. And kind of like what we were saying before, we started the podcast. I don't think you ever arrive. I think that the times in my life when I've thought, like, okay, once I get here, then I'll be content and I'll be happy, and then I can rest. I don't think we were made for that, and I think that there's not really contentment and peace when you get that. And then what happens is we start living our life in a way that we're always looking for this next thing, and then we get that next thing, and it doesn't fulfill us like we want, and then it's like this next thing that we put our eyes on and our hearts on, and then what we start to do is we start to miss out on these little opportunities in between, and we start to miss out on life, and then all of a sudden you wake up and you are like, what what have I done with my life? What have I always been looking for, this milestone moment that I missed out on all these beautiful little things that took place in between? And so I really feel that I haven't arrived, but that gives me the strength, and it gives me the energy and power to want to pursue something else and to continue to grow. And there always is this next thing, but there's always this excitement for the journey, where it's oh man, I'm excited for what's going to be in between now and that thing. And what do I have to do in order to get to, where I want to go. And then just find those little moments on that journey that are so fulfilling, and so it's such a blessing, to our lives.
Well, I was going to ask you for a parting piece of advice, but I think that was it.
Yeah, I think that was it. That was the parting advice.
I didn't take notes and pull any takeaways from this, but I can remember a couple off the top of my head that I think are helpful.
Yeah.
One, apologize to your children. Be humble. Apologize to your kids if you need to. I think enjoy the journey. The last one you just said is huge. And I think also not worrying unnecessarily about what's coming up. If you're working hard and you're doing what you can do, don't worry about the stuff you can't control. Mm-hmm. Just thinking about the stuff you can control, and that's all you can do. So don't worry about the next day. Just do what you can right now. Yeah,
I love that. Hey, thanks so much, you guys, for hanging out with us. If you're watching us on Facebook Live right now, I see some friends, Jeff, Cade, Rose. Thank you guys for tuning in, and everyone else who is watching us and hanging out with us, this past hour. If you're interested more about what Ben and I talk about and want to follow us, actually go to thefridayhabit.com, and there you can find all about what the Friday Habit is. You can subscribe to our podcast. You can get show notes for episodes. And you can also get access to our PDF that explains what the Friday Habit system is. It's going to show you how to set aside one full day each week to dedicate working on your business instead of in your business.
Yeah, and if you all enjoyed this episode, please subscribe so you get notified when new episodes come out. And we'd love to get a review from you in the Apple Podcast app. You can leave Mark a happy birthday message in your review. And if you have any questions or topics you want us to cover, don't forget to record us a quick voice memo and email it to hello@thefridayhabit.com.
That's right. And until next time, live every day like it's Friday.